Have you ever wondered why you actually enjoy being alone? Why that silence feels safer than any relationship, and why the world outside feels like noise you no longer want to hear? What if I told you your solitude isn't peace, it's protection, and the reason you crave it runs far deeper and darker than you think? If you're ready to understand the truth most people are too afraid to face, hit subscribe, because here we don't escape the darkness, we study it. You don't really choose to be alone. It's something that happens to you quietly, almost like a reflex, one disappointment at a time, one betrayal too many, and slowly you begin to build walls that no one notices until they've already surrounded you. People call it independence, but deep down, you know it's defense. You stopped trying to explain yourself long ago, because explaining only led to being misunderstood, and being misunderstood always hurt more than being ignored. So you retreat. You tell yourself it's peace, but peace that grows from fear is never really peace. It's just exhaustion disguised as strength. You begin to realize that solitude doesn't just protect you from others, it protects you from yourself. When you're alone, you don't have to pretend. You don't have to adjust your tone, filter your thoughts, or watch your words. You don't have to smile when you're breaking inside. There's no audience, no judgment, no pressure to perform. In solitude, you reclaim control. You become your own observer, your own confidant, your own shelter. But beneath that calm control, there's still something trembling. A small, restless part of you that remembers what it felt like to trust and what it cost you. So you silence it. You convince yourself that connection is chaos, that people drain your peace, that the world outside is filled with noise that doesn't understand your frequency. And maybe you're right. But maybe that truth is also the reason you've built a world that no one else can enter. You start mistaking distance for clarity and silence for healing. You start believing that solitude is proof of strength, when sometimes it's just the scar tissue around a wound you've never cleaned. The mind is clever like that. It can turn pain into philosophy. You start calling it self-love, self-reliance, self-growth. You start quoting how solitude is where geniuses thrive, how loneliness is the price of depth. But sometimes all of that wisdom is just your way of avoiding the raw truth, that isolation feels safer than the risk of being hurt again. That I love being alone sometimes really means I don't trust anyone not to break me. There's something darkly beautiful about solitude though, isn't there? The quiet feels sacred. The world slows down. You begin to see things more clearly. People's motives, your own patterns, the masks everyone wears. You learn to read silence like language. You find comfort in your own company because it's predictable, honest, and free from the weight of disappointment. But over time, that comfort hardens. You become addicted to the absence of others. The longer you stay alone, the less you remember how to belong. And yet there's still that ache. Small, faint. It visits you late at night when the silence turns too loud. It whispers that maybe you were never meant to be completely untouched. Maybe your isolation isn't who you are. It's what you became to survive. You tell yourself it's fine, that you don't need anyone. But somewhere deep within, your mind remembers. The warmth, the connection, the trust that once existed before the world taught you to flinch. That's the paradox of solitude. It heals what others broke, but it also hides what still needs to be healed. It's both sanctuary and prison. You crave it because it protects you. You fear losing it because it defines you, and as much as you say you love being alone, part of you wonders if you really do, or if you just love the safety of never being hurt again. Because the truth is, solitude isn't always peace. Sometimes it's just silence after the storm, and you've mistaken the quiet for healing, control. That's what solitude really gives you. Not freedom, not peace, but control. When you're alone, nothing unpredictable can reach you. No sudden moods, no shifting emotions, no one walking in and changing the atmosphere without warning. It's your world, shaped by your rules. Every sound, every silence, every thought belongs to you. You don't have to manage anyone else's emotions. You don't have to decode mixed signals or defend your boundaries. In solitude, you decide who enters your mind, and most days the answer is no one. It starts as self-protection, but slowly it becomes an addiction. The absence of chaos feels like oxygen. You start craving it, defending it, guarding it like something sacred, because control is intoxicating. Once you've tasted a life where no one can hurt you, you stop wanting to take risks. You start rejecting anything that could disturb your calm, even if it means rejecting connection, love, or growth. Peace begins to feel fragile, and people become the threat. You no longer crave companionship, you crave predictability, and only solitude can give you that. Your space becomes a laboratory of control. Every object, every sound, every routine feels deliberate. You curate your environment like a shrine to stability, and in that stillness something powerful grows, a sense of mastery over your own existence. You start to feel untouchable, as if you've transcended the mess of human emotion. You convince yourself you're better off without the noise, but what you don't see is how control slowly turns into captivity. The peace you built becomes too perfect, too sterile. You stop adapting, you stop bending, you stop needing anyone, and at first that feels like strength, until you realize it's also emptiness. You used to fear rejection, now you fear dependence. You used to crave connection, now you call it distraction. You've trained yourself to find discomfort in vulnerability, to see emotional closeness as chaos. You've become addicted to the illusion of order. You don't just enjoy solitude, you manage it like an empire. And every time life tries to pull you back into the unpredictable rhythm of people, you retreat deeper into your fortress of control, convincing yourself it's peace, when really it's avoidance wrapped in calm. There's a strange power in it though, an almost godlike stillness. You decide when to speak, when to move, when to feel. You orchestrate your own world, untouched by other people's storms. It feels pure, it feels right. But control has a dark hunger. It always wants more. It starts shaping your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions. You begin controlling not just your surroundings, but your own heart. You suppress the parts of you that long for chaos, the spontaneous laughter, the vulnerability, the softness. You become disciplined in your own isolation, and that discipline feels like safety, but it's also what keeps you from being fully alive, because control gives comfort, but it also kills curiosity. It numbs the natural rhythm of the human heart. It replaces connection with calculation. And though you've silenced the noise, you've also silenced the music. The part of you that once felt alive now watches life like an observer, detached, analytical, in control, but untouched. You've built a world where nothing can break you, but nothing can reach you either. You've mistaken stillness for healing. You've mistaken control for peace. But real peace doesn't come from having power over your emotions. It comes from trusting them. Solitude has made you powerful, yes, but only in ways that keep you alone. Because when you control everything, nothing real can ever touch you again. There's a quiet arrogance that grows inside those who spend too much time alone. It doesn't start that way. At first, solitude feels pure, even humble. You withdraw to find peace, to rebuild yourself after being broken by noise, by people, by chaos. But over time, that silence starts whispering a different story. You start believing you see things others don't, that your distance makes you wiser, that your detachment means depth. You begin to confuse isolation with insight. The less you speak, the more you think you understand. You watch people from a distance, studying them like patterns in a storm. Their small talk feels shallow, their dramas predictable, their happiness artificial. You start to feel separate, not lonely but above. You tell yourself it's not superiority, it's awareness. But deep down you know it's pride wearing the mask of clarity. You've turned your distance into identity and your isolation into ego. The more you stay apart, the more you begin to believe that no one else really gets it. You think your mind is sharper because it's quiet, your emotions deeper because they're hidden. You call it understanding, but sometimes it's just judgment disguised as intelligence. You start measuring people in silence, how loud they are, how easily they give themselves away, how desperate they seem to belong. You, on the other hand, feel untouchable, self-contained, unmoved. But that calm isn't enlightenment, it's emptiness mistaken for control. You've built an identity on being the one who doesn't need anyone, and it feels powerful, it feels like freedom. But it's not freedom, it's a throne in an empty room. There's a strange satisfaction in seeing yourself as separate from the crowd. You look at the world and see foolishness everywhere, in their attachments, their excitement, their dependence. You tell yourself you've transcended it, but the truth is, you've only disconnected. What you call depth might just be distance. What you call clarity might just be coldness. You've stopped feeling because you've convinced yourself that feeling is weakness. You've started to believe that needing people makes you ordinary. And in that quiet belief, you've built a wall so tall, even your own emotions cannot climb it anymore. You observe life like a scientist, not a participant. You watch people fall in love, argue, break, heal, and you analyze them like data. You take comfort in being the one who isn't consumed by it all. But the more you detach, the less human you feel. The less you risk, the less you live. Solitude becomes your empire, and you rule it with logic, but it's a kingdom with no warmth, no laughter, no pulse. You've mistaken stillness for superiority. You've mistaken emotional detachment for evolution, and the saddest part, you believe this makes you strong. In truth, it's fear. Polished, refined, intellectualized fear. You've learned to elevate your pain into philosophy. You use awareness as armor. You wear wisdom like a crown to hide the wound of never feeling understood. It's easier to say others are shallow than to admit you're scared of being seen. It's easier to call yourself an observer than to admit you've forgotten how to belong. You think solitude has made you wiser. But wisdom without connection isn't wisdom. It's shadow. It's the echo of knowledge in an empty room. And one day you'll realize the superiority you felt was never power. It was just distance, pretending to be depth. Because when you stand too far above the world, you stop being part of it. There's something haunting about the silence of being alone. It's not empty, it's alive. It breathes with memories, whispers, echoes of things you never said. At first you call it peace, but after a while, you begin to realize it's not peace at all. It's confrontation. Solitude doesn't free you from your thoughts. It locks you in a room with them. And in that stillness, everything you've buried starts to surface. The regrets, the faces, the words that cut too deep to forget. When you're alone long enough, the mind stops pretending. The mask falls away. The lies you told yourself about being fine, about not caring, about moving on, begin to crumble. And beneath it all, there's truth. Dark, uncomfortable, raw. Solitude forces you to meet it face to face. You can't escape it by distraction anymore. There's no one left to blame, no noise left to hide behind. You sit in the quiet and finally hear the parts of yourself that have been screaming beneath the surface. It's strange how the darkness starts to feel honest. You begin to trust it more than you trust light, because the light asks you to smile, to perform, to be okay. But the dark doesn't demand that. It lets you exist without pretending. You can be broken in the dark. You can be real there. And that realness becomes intoxicating. You start craving it, not because it feels good, but because it feels true. The world outside feels artificial now. The smiles, the chatter, the endless noise, all of it feels fake. But your darkness, that feels pure. You start to find comfort in it. The pain becomes familiar, almost gentle. The sadness stops scaring you. It feels like home. You stop running from the heaviness and start sinking into it, because at least there, you feel something that isn't shallow. It's strange how easily suffering turns into sanctuary. You don't notice it happening. You just wake up one day and realize you feel safer in shadows than in sunlight. The darkness doesn't judge you. It doesn't abandon you. It simply stays. And the more time you spend there, the more you begin to mistake comfort for healing. You think the stillness means you've made peace with your demons, but really, you've just learned to live with them. You've built a home around your pain and started calling it strength. You tell yourself solitude has made you self-aware, but sometimes it's just made you numb. Because the truth is, even pain becomes addictive when it's predictable. There's beauty in the dark, yes, but it's a dangerous kind of beauty. It pulls you in with honesty, but keeps you there with fear. You stop wanting to step back into the light because the light feels false now. It feels too bright, too loud, too fragile. And so you stay, half comforted, half haunted, in that space between healing and decay. You tell yourself this is who you are now, that this is peace. but deep down you know it's not peace, it's surrender. You've mistaken the comfort of the dark for control. You've mistaken the silence for strength. But silence doesn't always mean calm. Sometimes it's just pain too tired to scream. Because the truth is, the darkness you find in solitude isn't what destroys you, it's what reveals you. And that's the paradox, isn't it? You spend so long protecting yourself from the world that you end up needing protection from yourself. You build silence to find peace, but the silence becomes too loud. You hide from pain until it becomes the only thing that feels real. In the end, solitude doesn't save you. It strips you down until there's nowhere left to hide, not even from your own reflection. Because when you stare into the darkness long enough, it stops looking back. It starts becoming you.